Hi, I'm Micah Brady, real estate broker here in the Santa Ynez Valley. I love calling the Santa Ynez Valley my home. Throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to visit some amazing properties and meet some amazing people, and I'd like for you to meet them all. So welcome to our Meet the Valley series. Hi, I'm Micah. We are here today visiting the renowned Santa Barbara County winemaker, Andrew Murray. And we're hoping to get Andrew's perspective on the wine industry and his history here in the Santa Ynez Valley. So welcome, Andrew.
Hi there. My name is Andrew Murray. I have been fortunate enough to be here making wine in the Santa Ynez Valley, Santa Barbara County, for the last 30 years. And I am blessed to have been a friend of Micah for a very long time now, for almost all of those 30 years.
Well, first of all, how are you doing? Tell us about the wine business these days. What's happening?
Well, I hear that we're coming out of COVID, even though it seemed no laughing there. But I mean, I say that sarcastically. But you know, we're here in our new terrace. We built this thing over the last 18 months, sort of as a response to COVID. And you know, when that came about, we thought the wine industry was going to just go away, a lot like the restaurant industry did. But it turns out a lot of people started coming up to wine country. So wine country blossomed over the last 3 years, frankly. And blessedly, we were the benefactors of that. So the wine industry's been great. You know, we just had a major rain event. It's been a little bit hard on the valley. There was some forced evacuation, you know, all those terrible things that come with big rain events. But we need this rain so badly. All of our soils here are uplifted mesas that are heavy in sand deposits. You know, it's ancient, sort of Jurassic soils, really, ancient maritime soils, and so rains are really, really important. But so we've just had, you know, we've had more rain than we've had almost in the last 2 years, in the last 30 days. So I mean, I'm as optimistic as ever. But you know, I do tell people I'm a farmer, so you got to wake up every day slightly optimistic that it's going to be a little better than the last, because if not, you shouldn't be in this business.
Well, when the initial lockdown happened in COVID, my dad and I talked on the phone. I'll never forget it. We were literally locked in our houses, and we're thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen with the real estate market? Are we going to go into another turn down? And
like 08?
Well, like some rough years. And fortunately, it didn't go that way, and it blossomed.
Yeah.
And the valley's become an even more known destination. A lot of it has to do with its natural beauty and high quality way of living, and we have excellent wine and excellent restaurants, and so
it seems like more than ever lately, right? I mean, a lot of these places, Bar La Côte opened during the pandemic. You know, it's crazy to think that people were taking chances and growing new businesses over the last few years. And then you've sold quite a few homes and places, and you've seen the sort of the demographic of the valley. We're getting younger, you're seeing more people with kids going into schools again. I mean, we raised our kids here together, and you know, we saw sort of classes swell, you know, you at Ballard, me over at Family School or at Dunn, and then see those same class sizes start to diminish, you know, because it sort of was like a retirement community for a lot of people.
What do you love about living here in the Santa Ynez Valley? And what would you tell anyone that's looking to move here in the Santa Ynez
Valley? I mean, this is going to sound so silly, but I love everything about the Santa Ynez Valley. You know, we are really, really close to Santa Barbara. You know, it feels like it's so far away, but my wife and I regularly just go down there for dinner. But what's great about it, that we have an airport, we have a city next to us, but the great thing is we're also 30 miles away. You know, and I've loved living here in the country. We've got these pastoral views. I think our weather is absolutely to die for. We don't get June gloom. You know, we mostly get mild summers. We get beautiful weather late into the fall. I mean, it's early January and we're sitting out here in just, you know, thin sweatshirts. You know, this is as good as it gets. You know, and I also love that people come here on their vacation. You know, so we live in a place where people want to come to. So I love that about this area. And I love, you know, you've you've helped sort of change the demographic of this valley. You know, you and fellow real estate brokers. You know, a lot of younger people, different backgrounds, different experiences. You know, this is notoriously a hard place to find a job. You know, a sustaining job. So you sort of had to come here with an occupation, have retired here, or, you know, do things maybe in Hollywood or something, you know, get in the wine biz, the restaurant biz. You know, there are a few things you can do here, but a lot of people, you know, telecommuting has allowed people to move here and do a very big variety of different jobs.
What advice, besides using me as their broker,
Yeah.
what would you...
Definitely use Micah Brady as your broker, because you will get no better of a guy, no better of a human being to help you with that transaction. What would I tell you? You know, I think, God, I don't want this to sound so provincial, but a lot of people come here and just want to change the valley. And it's pretty good. You know, I mean, I think everything can always improve, but I think sort of come here, get to know the lay of the land before you come here and you just want to change it all. You know, it's pretty great just like it is. So
Bee Valley.
What's that?
Bee Valley.
Bee Valley, yeah, you know. But, you know that we're historically a tradition of ranch values. You know, I mean, it's a farming ranch community historically. And so I just think that's always important to know. You know, it's like you can shed some of your city intensity, you know, which I had to do moving here. You know, it took me quite a while to sort of slow it down and not look for activity all the time. But what I would love to share people sort of last is that it's a wonderfully diverse population. You know, I meet so many different people, so many different opportunities to meet people of different means, different ways of life, different past experiences. There's a lot going on here. And I think it's a complete community. You know, I do meet some people that have part-time moved here and go, oh, I can't live there full-time. You know, and why? You know, and then they start telling me why.
They end up living here full-time.
They do eventually. Sometimes it's career related, but sometimes they say, oh, there's just not enough stuff going on. You know, my wife and I find it's exhausting sometimes how many things are going on in this valley. You know, and it may not be that way for everybody, but there's a lot of things going on in this valley. You know, there's a lot of charitable events. We have a lot of, you know, a lot of great restaurants that are hosting winemaker dinners or farm table events out in the fields. You know, we have fairs, you know, small town, you know, Los Alamos days, Santa Ynez days. You know, there's stuff going on here. I feel like there's a lot to do here. And so I think that's a misconception of our area.
What got you into your love for wine and winemaking?
Sometimes it's, you know, we do internships with young people. Recently from Cal Poly, my wife and I really got involved with the winery program up there, and we've been doing a lot of sort of mentoring and working with young people. And you know, I always say, don't be afraid to say yes. You know, it's like so many times in life you're offered an opportunity, and it seems so crazy, but there were so many times where my family would say, hey, do you want to go on this trip to Europe? Do you want to go to boarding school in Switzerland? Do you want to go learn French in Switzerland? You know, and at the time, it was like the least sexy thing to be doing in my life. You know, I was 14, 15 years old. I didn't want to really go do that.
Well, most kids were skateboarding then.
I was skateboarding, you know, breaking my arms and legs and, you know, in people's empty swimming pools in Long Beach at that time. But I said yes. You know, my father was moving to France. He'd sold his business, Mexican restaurant business, and had this incredible opportunity where, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Yes, yes, yes. You know, why not? And every single step of the way, you know, should we start a family business together? Should we start a winery together? You know, my parents had a lot of business sense. I had a little bit of passion. I loved Europe, loved the whole idea of a generational family business. It seemed like we could establish that in the wine business. Turns out it's more difficult than you think, but it seemed like I like to tell people, just don't be afraid to say yes. You know, it's so easy to say no, but just say yes. And almost everything good that's happened, there's some bad things happen when I've said yes to, you can imagine, but most of it's been great. So it's like, should we get in the wine business? Should we do this? Should we grow? Should we do Rhone varieties on hillsides? You know, when no one was doing that, you know, it's like, sure, we should do that. No one else is. You know, entrepreneurship seems like you're supposed to create something, find a demand, and fill that void.
And I love your passion, by the way. It's just, I've known you a long time, and what is always inspiring to me is that you have that same passion for your work. You love wine, and that really does, carry through who you are.
Yeah, I always remind people, hey, if you think your best transaction, my best vintage, if you think you've already had it, you need to get out. I'm still convinced I'm making a difference and learning, by drinking wines, by, traveling the world and experiencing other people's wines and, talking with neighbors, having good conversations. I'm still think I'm learning. And so I'm still convinced my best wine is somewhere out there, and I wake up every day hungry for it. But I want to be fair. We were ahead of the curve with Rhone varieties, planting on hillsides, but we were smart enough that we planted ourselves right next door to Santa Ynez. They're celebrating 40 plus years as we're celebrating 30 years. So they were there and grounded a good decade before we were. The likes of Jim Clendenin were making wine there. Dan Gears, Bob Lindquist. There were a bunch of greats. Ken Brown, that went through. They called it Zacamesi U. So we were in the right place. We didn't really understand it at the time, but between Jim Clendenin, Bill Waltham, and Jim Clendenin of Aubon Clement, he's passed. But Bill Waltham and Dick Doré of Fox and Winery, those guys were instrumental in letting us know the lay of the land and this is where you should be. And so when my parents found that piece of property, it seemed like a no-brainer, like we were going to find success there. We quickly learned it was an expensive place to develop. It had no road in, no water, no electrical, no telephone. Everything had to get permitted and built and started from scratch. It was an incredible development that my parents did. And I was just sort of a kid on the sideline, up until the day we planted the grapes. We designed the winery, and local guy Chuck Gandalfo still lives down the street from me. There's so many local connections. He and my dad really built the winery, got it permitted, got it installed. I was in Australia in 1991 doing my first internship. I was 18 years old. I turned 19 in the middle of it in West Australia, learning a little bit more, how to make wine, before I went off to UC Davis. And I came home, and the foundation of the winery had been constructed. Cool. And I haven't told this story that many times, but the winery that I was working for in Australia called Capel Vale was owned by a family, and they were growing. It was, sort of an ideal moment to like step into this opportunity as this young, I was just the floor washer, but I learned a lot. But I was there, and the place was quite big. I put, as you know, but just so everyone else knows, we use bungs to stop up our barrels. I put bungs in all the four corners of the size of the winery that we were building back home, and would just walk through it in my mind every single day, and where this was, and where we were going to put this, and where the laboratory lab was going to be, where the bottling line, the crush pad, where it was all going to be. And it was just so cool, because to be young and sensing all this potential, just in the beginning of it all, it was exciting. And we were wrong. I was wrong about everything. Nothing quite worked once we got it built. Like, wow, this is so much smaller.
Well, it's always trial and error on everything, right?
So much smaller than we thought. And we learned really quickly that it was hard for two families to make a living with a 5,000 case winery. The winery was designed to be quite small. And we were emulating European wineries. And what we learned later was those wineries had sunk costs. They'd owned the vineyards and the wineries and the land for multi-generations. We were generation one, in the California development environment, where everything was expensive and amortization and, learning all these things about business and sunk costs, development costs. And, it was tough lessons learned over those first 15 years. And then, you'd sold me my house, but 15 years after my family started this vineyard, you there stepped in and helped my family get out of the business and helped me go in a new direction.
Talk a little bit about that, because you had to pivot and maybe recreate yourself or step out on your own, because you were on your own. It wasn't so much a family deal. And from my perspective, since then, your wine career has, it's gone astronomical. In my opinion. A lot of that, the majority of that has to do with your hard work. But talk a little bit about when it sold, and now we are here almost 20 years later.
Let's think of what a complex transaction that was, right? I mean, I know it was a new big deal for you.
For me, selling that piece of property, it was the first winery vineyard that I had ever sold. I've been fortunate to sell many more since then, but it was extremely interesting. All the components of it.
Yeah.
Talking about the grapes and where the harvest is going, and the inventory involved, and employees involved. There's a lot of moving parts involved in that transaction.
The outcome has been incredible. I mean, our business is 100 times better because of that transaction. I mean, it was difficult family dynamic there for a minute, but I like to tell people, I've been really spoiled. I'd had, all of this opportunity, this beautiful piece of land that my parents had acquired, and this beautiful winery. I mean, we'd been in every major magazine before we'd barely released a bottle of wine, just because so many people saw the potential.
You still look about the same age, too.
That's nice.
Maybe a little less.
That's
here.
Nice. Yeah, I got certain angles, not so much. But, thankfully, we had become friends with the Firestone family through the years, and Fess Parker was making wine in a dilapidated building here in the back of the property. It's actually where the Firestone had started their brewery, which is such a huge success today. I mean, God, if I could grab 3% of that success, I would be such a happy person. But they'd offered this opportunity to continue making wine not very far away from where we started. So they threw me a lifeline. We moved in there in October and made our first vintage there in 2005. The transaction with my folks was a little bit nail biting there at the end, and it closed finally in the beginning.
Real estate brokering.
Yeah, it was. It was great. It was great brokering. It was keeping all parties
aligned,
going. Yeah, I mean, I was the buyer and the seller, and there was a lot of disparate desires, and I wanted some of the equipment. They wanted some of the equipment. I really didn't count because I wasn't party to the transaction. I was left ultimately at the end of the day with, an incredible start, my brand. So my name, my brand value, our customers, our inventory, some tanks and barrels, and a lot of opportunity. And so I had to make good on that. My wife and I had to figure out pretty quickly how to, this is a very capital intensive business, and we needed new equipment because we left a bunch behind. It was a come to Jesus moment. It was like, is this what we're going to do? And so Kristen and I, we doubled down, found so much pride in having a fair, decent, clean space to make wine. And Adam Firestone,
that was a fun spot up there, by the way.
Yeah, he helped us. We redid it and turned it into something pretty nice.
Those were a lot of good times. It was a good
and you guys would help. It was great. But we were so thankful and doubled our efforts, redoubled our energy. This is what we're going to do. We're going to keep doing it. We'll stay here in the valley. This is all we know. At that time, that's all I knew.
Doesn't it speak a little bit about your love, or you were really,
yeah,
you loved being here in the Santa Ynez Valley. This was home to you.
We're going to look over here. We can't see it right now, but right over there is is Grass Mountain, and I know it's a special place for you. And I always tell people that's my true north. When I looked out of the door at now Demetria, I'd look out and I would see Grass Mountain. When I come out of this front door of this winery, I look right, I see Grass Mountain. Yeah, I've moved 3 times, but it's been
third time's the charm.
I hope. It's I've sort of moved less than 3 miles from where I started. It's pretty great to see that we're still here and kicking it. I think we're still innovating, still looking forward, still, my best wine's out there, still yet to be made. You're always looking for inspiration. And in the wine business, I'm always looking for that new flavor. That's why I love to eat out, why I love to cook, why I love to collect and drink a lot of wine.
Well, like in real estate, I think it's hearing different life stories and getting to know them one-on-one. I think that's really, for me, real estate. You get to be on some pretty amazing pieces of property, but at the end of the day, it's really developing the relationships with the people that you're working with. Well, thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mike.
Appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to meet with us. And
looks like you enjoyed the wine.
I love the wine.
I poured you a small sip. Didn't want this to get sloppy.